Welcome to the show. My guest tonight is Casey Greabeiel.
There you go. Nailed it, buddy. Right from the start.
Thanks for coming on.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Yeah. It's funny the way that life evolves. I always probably would have led with career and like what my accomplishments were and are, but now it's by far. I'm a father of two amazing kids. I have a 4.5 and a 2.5-year-old, Paige and Vaughn, and a beautiful wife. And I'm a Calgarian, I guess. I've been in this city longer than almost as long, I guess, as I was in Edmonton. So I feel like I'm a Calgarian now. I still cheer for the Oilers, though. Been in the hospitality industry basically my entire life. I started as a security doorman, bouncer, whatever you want to call that position, at 19 in Edmonton, and quickly moved into management and that kind of jazz. And when I was 21 years old, I was making more money than I was projected to make in the job I was in university for. And I was like, this doesn't make a lot of sense. So finished my degrees, opened my first bar at 24, was bankrupt at 28, came to Calgary and thought I was like, okay, I'm never going to do a restaurant or bar again. 3 years later, two years later, the Hudson's, Canada's pub, Canadian Tap House chain came to Calgary from Edmonton. I knew those guys and they asked me to be a part of it. Talked earlier about my dislike for Southeast Calgary and the drive. I was living in Southeast Calgary and they opened the Shaughnessy location. So I was like, okay, well, I can at least avoid the drive downtown. And that was one of my selling features to go back into the restaurant bar business, was to have an easier drive to work every day. But yeah, I started working with them in 2010. We were doing amazing. I got up to 11 pubs with them. And then I think 2 or 3 times during those years, my business partner and I agreed that I was going to give my notice. I started working on a restaurant or two out in Kelowna. And it was just like Kelowna was going to be my future, because at the time the person I was seeing, she had a little boy, and it was move to Kelowna or probably not pursue that relationship. So I was like, all right, well, follow the heart, silly things that we do in life. But luckily I never took my foot out of the door with Hudson's, because the next big play was Greta Bar, which we opened in 2018 in Calgary. 2019 we opened an Edmonton location. 2020 we had COVID. 2021 COVID. But then near the end of 2021 we started working on our Vancouver location. And when we opened our Vancouver location, it was 5 weeks after most of the restrictions and everything. So it was like the perfect timing to open a concept there. And we just absolutely blew the doors off. So we started looking at Toronto at that point. Kind of had looked at Toronto before, but looked really seriously in Toronto. And then, just this last April, we opened in Toronto. So currently I oversee the 4 Greta Bars. We have Salt and Brick Calgary, which was an offshoot of the Salt and Brick in Kelowna that I have. We have a cool speakeasy in the back of Salt and Brick Calgary called Charlie's Watch Repair. And then I have 2 other spots in Kelowna. One is I look after the Diner Deluxe in Kelowna. They have a couple other ones in Calgary that I'm not involved with. And then we have a cool brand that is very near and dear to my heart called Pretty Not Bad, which was a elevated, unique, unconventional sports bar concept that we've tweaked and made more of a conventional sports bar concept over the last year, as we've learned that people didn't understand the unconventional side. But yeah, so I think 10 businesses right now. My wife's also an entrepreneur, so I feel a part of hers too. So I was born and bred to be an entrepreneur. I know that's for sure. Both my grandparents were very successful. Even my great grandparents on the one side, very successful business owners, and for whatever reason, it was always what I was meant to do. That's
a lot on your plate, and with the 2 kids.
Yeah, the kids are the key, and the kids are the highlight. Though they're the ones that make everything else worth doing. And to be very honest, as they get older, everybody says obviously kids are a lot of work when they're born, but when you get to 7, 9, whatever those ages where you have to actually just be their chauffeur, maybe their hockey coach, things like that. I feel like I'm only getting into the time where my kids are going to need more and more of myself. So it's been one of the big challenges that I'm facing right now in my career, is definitely, determining what the right path is. If you continue forward with all those projects in all those different cities, or if you just focus in on one. I've always struggled with the definition of success. So I grew up with I'd say lower self-esteem, and probably still have it somewhere deep down. And I'm always trying to prove to myself and prove to others, that I'm a success. And, I think that's one of the big changes is having the kids. The kids is what makes me feel like a success now. And, having a happy marriage is something that is key to being a success now. Not as much, having as many businesses as you can and the sales and the revenue and all that. So focus on the family and everything else will fall in place.
Yeah, I had two questions related to those things.
Yeah.
One was how your definition of success has changed now compared to maybe 10 years ago.
Yep.
Maybe start with that.
Sure. Yeah, we opened pretty not bad a couple of years ago in Kelowna. So I guess almost 2.5 years ago, we took over the space. And one of the guys in Kelowna who is one of our, industry friends, he's got one spot and he sends me a message on Facebook and he's just like, what the hell are you doing, man? How do you do it? Why do you do it? What are you doing? And it really made me think about it. And like I said earlier, I've battled that self-esteem issue. I've battled that belief that I'm not good enough or what I'm doing isn't enough, or, and again, no matter what's kind of come my way as a positive, there's always been this, this thing I've been chasing, there's always been this, this desire to do more and be better and make more money and all that kind of stuff. And it truly, I found out that I was going to be a dad in 2019. And we had our daughter in June of 2020. And that just that was a colossal shift for me. And then every year since, it's just as my kids get older, it just drives home more and more that the business stuff doesn't matter, at the end of the day, the whatever slogan or saying, they want to say about, when you pass and, your eulogy or your tombstone, what it says on it, nobody's going to care about how many businesses I own. Nobody's going to care about, the sales, the numbers, the bankruptcy, none of that. They're going to care, they're going to care about who you were as a person and what you did and who you helped. And then, for me, I'm hopeful that it's going to be my kids that are the ones, saying the nice words and being like, he was just an amazing dad and he always put us first. And that's the challenge I'm facing right now is again, trying to find that balance of, I always call it the triple threat. I'm a big sports guy. So, I call it triple threat, being a great dad, being an amazing husband, and then still being a successful business person. And it's not easy, if you think about, sports and, it's hard, baseball being one, it's hard to be a great hitter, a great home run hitter, a great base stealer, and a great guy hitting for average too. It's really hard to do all those things, right? So yeah, it's a constant challenge for me every day to face, hey, which do I want to be best at? Which one, and then to throw it for a loop. I really had my business partner give me the airplane and crashing analogy this year, because when I talk about those things, I rarely talk about myself and my own health. Mm-hmm. And my sister got breast cancer this year, and she's had a hell of a battle that she's been facing, and she's been killing it, doing an amazing job, and she's just the best aunt in the world. And it really gave obviously a lot of perspective, and it reminded me on top of those three things, I also have to be really kind to myself. I also have to be dealing with my own physical and mental health on a regular basis. So definition of success, add that one in there, right? So now there's four things that I got to focus on. And, I think the airplane analogy obviously being put your own mask on first before you put others on. And, I think that's something I've never really been great with when it comes to relationships and friendships. It's always been, what can I give to others rather than worrying about, what I'm getting myself. And I don't know, I've never wanted to alter that, but, I definitely recognize as I get older, my mom slipped and fell the other day, broke her wrist. We saw her today and broke her wrist, scratched her face, broke some teeth. She's 75 this year. You just, as people get older and, obviously as, we face challenges in life, like cancer and things like that. It's just again, really drives home what really matters and what's really success. And, success is happiness, and happiness is what you derive it from, right? And for me, it's my wife and my kids and my close friends and family. It's not seeing numbers and, being successful on a business front anymore.
Yeah. My other question was how fatherhood has changed the way you run your businesses.
It's changed a couple things for sure. I mean, I think when we were opening Greta Toronto, we did a mini documentary behind the scenes, of what it's like to open a bar, what's like to open a bar across the country, because that was a big part of it, was lots of people moving to Toronto, myself temporarily relocating with the family. And I think one of the big things for me was just making sure that, the kids were always a part of it, so, when we open our businesses, there's no one that doesn't know that I have two little kids. There's no one doesn't know that they're my reason for doing things. In Calgary, they have, they see my kids obviously more often than any of the other cities because they're in there playing the games and they're having fun. Like my kids were probably 1 year old when they were shooting dinosaurs on Jurassic Park, which might not be the best way of raising your kids at that age. But yeah, they're very involved in our businesses. Like my daughter loves taking orders down. Like she's working in a restaurant, which is super cool. And they're just such, they're such hospitable, outgoing children. This morning, when I met my mom, I challenged my daughter to go up to the hostess at the restaurant and ask for like crayons or something. And, I think a lot of 4.5-year-olds would be too shy to do those things. And my daughter's like, no, I got it. And then the second that she accomplished that task, you just saw that massive smile on her face. She, it was like Christmas morning almost, and getting a little pad and paper to play with. But yeah, I think like just making sure that people know, I think it truly has, I do believe that having kids and having them as part of your life, it makes a difference to the team. Like it makes me, I like to think, more approachable. I think it makes people feel like someone in my role is like more human. I think that's the positive. I think one of my real big goals is for people to see that you can do it. Cause I think that's one of the challenges in hospitality and in my industry is that, people don't see how they can be all those things, how you can be, a good husband, a good father, or a good wife, whatever, whichever way you go on that, and be a successful business person. And I think the hospitality industry is known for, late nights, long hours. So I think trying to figure that out and navigating what that works, what that looks like. But my alcohol consumption since my kids have been born is probably about 100 times lower. So, there's just not little things. I guess that's a big thing to go from, having, there's nights running bars where you will have 20 plus drinks, like for sure. And it's not a healthy habit by any means. But when you have to get back home to your kids and B, you have to wake up in the next morning and be a good dad at 7 a.m. or 6:30 a.m, and functioning and not feeling great, it really makes you think about like what's the priorities in life. So I would say I'm still nowhere near as healthy as I'd like to be. I always say my current goal right now is to always live 10 years younger based on some of those health metrics, so I'm turned 45 this year. So I'd like to feel like I'm 35. I'd like to have the health of a 35-year-old. Cause I want to live a long time for my kids. Right. So.
Is this the dagger?
So you said you got started as a doorman?
Yeah.
Or whatever you'd call it.
Back then they were called bouncers. Back then you were allowed to call them bouncers. Back then I was playing Golden Bears football, and there was the big boys. I was the littlest guy of them all, probably at 6 foot 210. We had a lot of big fellas on our security team.
How long did you do that for?
Fortunately, a very short time. I was because this was like nowadays we call them door hosts. I would have been a great door host. Back then, they expected you to stand in the corner and watch the room. So it was not a kind of job that I really enjoyed. But I watched the dynamics, and I'd say one of my biggest things was, to be honest, I watched how much money the bartenders were making, and I was like, how do I do that? That became my goal really quickly. Was like, I want to be a bartender. I see that they're making a lot more money than we are, and that was kind of my reasoning, I guess, to try and progress quickly. So I think I was only a security door host for maybe like 4 months. But I would say as a bar manager, basically since I've been 19 years old till now, every day I'm in my businesses. I have a component of security. Luckily, it's moved more so to really ensuring that everybody is safe now. You know, like that's one of the things we're always so proud of Greta is, you know, it's such a safe space. There's very few incidents, and I wouldn't attribute much of that to me, my background starting then. But I remember when I first started when I was 19, every night I would go to work, my dad would be like, be safe, you know, and I didn't even think of it back then. I never was like, oh, nothing's bad's ever going to happen. But, you know, it's, you know, the bar business can be a dangerous business for sure. So I'm very fortunate that, you know, 25 years later, this pretty face is still untouched.
At what point then did you realize it was going to be your career long-term over just a job?
Yeah. So I was finishing my degree, and so I was in school. Initially, I thought I was going to be in business, and then after 1 year in business, I was like, I missed out on getting in business school by 0.1 on the grade point average, and at that point, definitely didn't have the resilience or the grit needed to push through something like that and go to summer school or whatever, upgrade and just be like, okay, you know, I just was like, no, I guess I wasn't supposed to do business school, and I ended up going into education with the goal of being a football coach, gym teacher, that vibe. All my family, basically my dad, my mom, my stepmom, my stepdad, and my sister are all teachers. All their various types of teachers. So I kind of just was like, okay, I guess I'm supposed to teach. So yeah, like I said, I was making a lot of money at a pretty young age with no, you know, you don't need an educational background to be a restaurant manager, bar manager. Truly, you just have to have some common sense and a good personality, I like to think. And I think the day, I don't know, it was definitely shattered after the first. So at one point we had, you know, let's call it 3.5, four businesses in Edmonton with my two best friends. And it was on the outside, maybe it looked like we had our shit together, but behind the scenes, like the numbers and the money and everything was just a mess. And we were just constantly putting money in, borrowing money. You know, my parents helped me out so much back then. But truly they were giving me money to just basically throw it away because they didn't want me to give up my dream yet at such a young age. So I would say, like, I thought at 27, that was what I wanted to do so I would say when I opened my first place, I was 24, August of 2004. We opened July or August of 2004. And I would have said that was the day I knew for sure that's what I wanted to do. But that completely got thrown out the window, I'd say, you know, in that next 4 years with the ups and downs. Yeah, I couldn't even place it, the actual moment. There's been some big ones. Obviously, joining the Hudson's group was huge for me. My partner, Chris, we've now worked together for almost 15 years. And everything Chris and I talked about the day he hired me, basically, if he said you worked hard, you showed your skills, you do all these things, you know, you can be a partner, you can move up in this company very quickly, all these things, like those things all became a reality. So I think that part of the time was obviously like, okay, when you're part of a bigger company, that you don't have to worry about the bills being paid every day. You don't have to worry about where it's, you know, it doesn't have to all come out of your own pocket. And then I made the move to open a restaurant in Kelowna. And I think, I don't know, again, back to the self-esteem stuff, I felt like I still had to prove something, I think, when I opened that one. And so I'd say at that point, I was like, okay, this is what I want to do. And then, yeah, like I would tell you at 44 years old, almost 45, I love what I do. I love the team part. I love the development part. I love the guests. I love the sociability and hospitality part. But at 45 years old, running, you know, restaurants and arcade bars for a living, you know, I think there's a little bit of maybe a shelf life in my brain. So I don't know. I would say that I've never really known this is what I was supposed to do my whole entire life based on running through that with you there.
Yeah.
There's been indicators that it's like, this is what you should do. But I think for the most part, I fell into it. I saw a lot of success, which is what I needed, I think, mentally. And I was like, this is what I'm good at. You know, I should do this. And there's enough positives. There's enough things that make me happy to continue to do it. But yeah, I don't know. To this day, I would tell you, there's probably still something else out there that I'm supposed to do with my life, and still figuring it out.
From those failures, I guess, what were the biggest lessons that you learned and carried forward to that you kind of apply now?
Jeez, I call them opportunities. First off, I mean, yeah, they're numerous. I was actually having, you know, that lunch today. I was talking about my aunt was like, hey, there's this guy that we love, this bartender in Victoria that we'd love, we think he should pursue his career in hospitality. And she's like, what could I do to help him trying to figure out what the next steps are as a bartender? And I was just like, just give him my number, like just tell him to give me a call. Like, I'm happy. She was like, she's known me my whole life, obviously. And she was just like surprised that I'm like 100%. Like, I would love to have a conversation with that person and see where their head's at and offer advice. And listen to where they're at and maybe make suggestions based on my experiences. I think the big ones for me always are, obviously having a really great plan in place. Like, I don't think I ever put enough of work into the plan when it came to doing the restaurants and bars I did on my own. And then, restaurants cost money, and they're a lot of stress if you don't have the resources behind you. So making sure that you have the right support, whether it's from investors, whether it's from the bank, making sure you have that in place, because you don't want to cheap out on accountants, you don't want to cheap out on lawyers. Those things are the things that will come back to bite you in the ass. You want to hire the right construction team. You don't want to cut corners by using your uncle's best buddy or whatever. Like, it's very much an industry that and I think most businesses and most industries would probably be the same, but I think the restaurant industry is known for obviously a lot of failures. So really, like, having that plan and, talking to as many people that have done there and been there. I love that's part of what I love about, the social media world is like, it's so easy, to do a master class or to watch some YouTube videos of like people who've been there and done that and are willing to share very openly what worked and what didn't. So I think just doing your research, don't jump into something. And, partners are a tough one. I would definitely say that's another takeaway is like, even if you believe someone and you have the best relationship with them, and I don't want to boil it down to just money, but like money can ruin everything, and not having enough money can take, your best friends and turn them into your biggest enemies. And I think that irregardless of how hard you work, when there's no money in the bank account and bills to pay, people are going to do the Spider-Man meme and you're just going to be pointing and someone's pointing. And I've got a unique perspective on that because in the Greta Hudson's world, I don't deal with a lot of that stuff. I'm more operations and branding and marketing. And then in the Kelowna world, I'm the one who kind of deals with that stuff, just like, many years ago in Edmonton. And the stress that comes with being the person who is ultimately accountable to pay the bills. And when the money's not there to pay the bills, it's a level of stress I don't wish on anybody, to be honest. And so yeah, I think making sure you have your numbers in line and your business plan, and talking to as many people who've been there and done that before, and getting their advice on what little things maybe you could do, And I will say, I've told friends of mine, I can think of one particularly right off the top of my head, not to go forward with a project before because I just didn't think the plan was solid enough, and he did, and he's still in business many, many years later. So I'm definitely not the be all end all when it comes to knowing everything, but I'm definitely open to giving advice to young entrepreneurs and old entrepreneurs too, on what's worked and what hasn't for me, and not to. I think the key is just not to believe that just because it happened to me, it won't, they might have a completely different scenario than what happened to my life. But yeah, there's lots of steps to opening a business, or especially a restaurant. So
do you have a lot of people come to you for advice on business, young entrepreneurs kind of thing? Yeah,
I'd say like, I don't know what an actual number is, but I think because of opportunities like this, and because I'm pretty open, honest, and genuine on social in general, I would say I have quite a few people that feel that I have that level of approachability that I mentioned earlier that I'm trying to do. And I think like right off the bat, just my honesty when I tell people is like, the first rule of wanting to open a restaurant is don't. You know what I mean? Like when you start that way, even my business partner, we opened Salt and Brick in Kelowna in 2018. He was an oil and gas guy, and he successfully sold his business, moved to the Okanagan, and even him, I sent him an article like, why not to invest in a restaurant? This was going to be the guy who was going to be the backer behind these restaurants. And I'll tell you, to be 1,000,000% honest, he would tell you today he should have fucking listened. Because like at the end of the day, it's been a rocky road for him and I. We've had goods, we've had ups and downs, we've had huge successes. But if you look back at it, and especially if you define success by numbers, 100% that was not the wrong decision for both of us to do. And 8 years later, we can look back and, we could, you could regret it, but it is what it is. You do it. And luckily, to go back to partners, him and I have gone through so much personally and professionally over those years. And him and I are still good friends, so it does show there's it's not all about the money. There is a character component. There is a, relationship component that can be bigger than just the numbers, but it's hard. The numbers are definitely usually, I would say 85% of the time, the numbers in a failing business are going to really try a friendship or a relationship. And it has tried that friendship and relationship, but we've gotten through it and we continue to get through it as friends. And the funny thing is we weren't even friends when we started the thing. And I'd say we're incredibly close friends now, after everything we've been through. So that's kind of, I guess, the one cool part about going through those struggles with somebody. You do build a relationship and you do build, a comfort with each other. That's okay, not too many other people would have gone through this with me or for me, right? So I think that's one of the cool parts. But
it's almost like a marriage. It's like that personal, really.
Yeah, I mean, even my director of marketing with Greta Bar would say, she talks to me more often than she talks to her partner. So, I think that at the end of the day, that I think, I don't know what the total number is, but if you work 8, 9 hours, 10 hours a day for the 25 years of your life, the amount you're going to spend with those people is crazy, And so when I look at the key group that we have at Hudson's and Greta, most of the guys and girls who are with us have been with us for several years. We, especially on a management level, almost everyone was at my wedding. That's how close I am with them. I would say my two best friends in the world both work with me and for me, which is amazing. And I think that if you didn't have those ups and downs, you didn't have the ability to get through those things. I've had some really tough conversations just in the last couple of days with one of my leaders who's been with our company for years and is a super talented person, but sometimes no matter what you do, it doesn't work, and that's business, right? And obviously when you're facing those challenges in business, you need those other people around you to be able to help you, pull you up and be like, hey, it's not you. It's this is business. There's lots of circumstances. And B, it's well, have you tried this? Or, what about this? So again, to go back to your original question, I think that's where I love giving mentorship. If I looked at my big goals, I'm a write down goals guy. It is to, once kind of let's call it retired, it is to put a bunch of money aside to angel invest in restaurants and other entrepreneurs. And I loved when Dragon's Den and Shark Tank came out. I was like, one day I want to be on that other side where I can give other people the opportunity to create their dreams and, make that a reality. So whether that's through advice or through money, both those things are goals of mine still.
How do you approach building strong teams over multiple locations?
Yeah.
And what things do you look for that aren't on a resume?
Yeah. The really important stuff definitely isn't on a resume. That's for sure. I mean, I could look back into so many of the people that work for me right now and with me. And so many of them, I could not tell you if there was even a resume when I met with them. So, I've always been pretty unconventional with how I've chosen the people that I've worked with over the years. And again, some of those decisions I look back in retrospect and I go, well, I should have seen this red flag, or I should have listened to this person when someone gave me advice not to work with someone. And oftentimes I very much just go with my own intuition. And I'm like, I like this person. I trust this person. Even when I look back at some of those scenarios and, some of the situations where I'm like, maybe I shouldn't have trusted that much. Maybe I shouldn't have put that much risk on myself, whether it's, committing to do a project without having someone else as vested in it with you, whether that's financially or legally or whatever. I think I always look back and I go I'm glad that I did them and I'm glad I went through all those processes. When it comes to building a team though, I mean, I think, again, going back to my sports analogy, is I grew up playing sports. I grew up with the team sports analogies. I grew up with obviously having a coach, having a captain on their teams, having a leadership hierarchy, but also having everybody have to work together to achieve a common goal. So I think really playing well and playing nicely with others is such an important factor. I love what happens, when no one else is looking, those type people. When you go okay, who do you know is going to show up early, stay late? Who do you know is going to answer the call when, it's very obvious if your boss is calling you at 9:00 on a Saturday night, they're probably calling you because they need somebody to cover a shift. The people that answer that call, the people that show up for you, those are the people that I guess I see them do it oftentimes in, the introductory roles, servers, bartenders, even, shift managers, even junior managers, and you see them do those things. And then you're like, okay, that person has it. I used to define it as like old school, which I think is an unfair metric, especially now that, well, I guess what I would have defined as old school 10 years ago is now a completely different generation of people. But I used to have that mentality where I was like, it was about all the hours, right? And so, I took a really interesting management course 2 years ago now, I think. And one of the big things was talking about workplace viruses. Mm-hmm. And one of those things, workplace viruses can be good viruses as well. But one of the big ones for me was just the mentality that I think I took pride in everyone in our organization, and even people who didn't work with and for me, who see me always accessible, always on my phone, always available. I just felt like that's again, how I derived value and self-worth a little bit, was like, everybody knows that Casey's always working and Casey's always grinding. He's always, and again, you look back on it, you're like, what was the benefit of that? Wouldn't it be such a better leadership quality for people to see, oh, Casey can actually go on vacation and put his phone away. Oh, Casey can actually go to dinner with his family and not be busy all the time and not be dealing with stuff. And it's a big work in progress. Like my wife would tell you right now, like that's our number one issue in our relationship. We're happy to always, that's another thing we're always happy to share is like our struggles as a couple. We go to couples therapy, we talk through our issues. We try and figure out, how to have a successful marriage, like I said, while dealing with that other stuff. And, and it's mainly while dealing with my inability to turn it off, and it's something I'm striving for. And it's something that, again, when I talk about looking for and finding good people, it's obviously people that can help me achieve my goals too. So if I look at like my buckets and what it takes to do my job on a day-to-day basis, and if I'm taking, water from my bucket and having to put it in other people's buckets, it's okay. But if I'm having to do too much, that I'm running out of water in my bucket, and then now their buckets hopefully are filling up and getting overfull, they should now hopefully be empowered to do something. So that's the balance, I think, for me with people is, trying to figure out when you're giving too much of yourself. And when you're giving too much of yourself, especially on a work front, you do have to look at your team and you have to look at your people and do I have the right people if I don't have enough time to do what I need to do because I'm supporting someone in another area. But I think just always being open and honest, always having conversations. Again, that course I took, one of the takeaways was like, not giving feedback to others is such a disservice. And I literally sent 2 stories to that manager I was talking about earlier. I sent 2 stories to him today. One was by Jeff Bezos and one was a college basketball coach. And they were both on the importance of just being open and honest with feedback with people and being like, hey, the best moments in my life and the best moments in my career have been when someone's coached me hard or given me, important feedback to learn and grow from. And so I try and be that person who's willing to give hard feedback and not shy away from tough conversations. And I believe, when I look at the team I have now and all the years that these people have worked with me and with our companies, it's pretty cool to see. And like, I think that wouldn't be available if you didn't have tough conversations with people and you didn't have the ability to say, hey, like for whatever reason, you're not performing up to the level you need to. Like, what can we do to get you there? And then also to be open to getting that feedback myself. Like I do 360 profiles where my team gets a chance to give feedback to me. We do annual reviews, the same thing. And I take it all to heart, and when I hear feedback from people, one of my big ones was, being distracted in meetings, or always being on my phone, even when I'm in a meeting. And so I've tried so hard to like always flip my phone over or have it in my pocket and give people my full attention, even though like my brain is like, what's happening on your phone right now? We're good right now. It's a good time to be filming. I know my phone's not blowing up right now, but I always have this thing. And I think, again, that just weirdly goes back to this feeling of like, oh, I need to feel like I'm needed. Right. So, but yeah, man, I think building great teams is really just about empowering people, giving them opportunity. And, but I really think you need to have a certain knack for knowing people and being able to give them what they need to be successful and not stand in their way. I used to be a crazy micromanager too. And like, I learned that I can't be a micromanager of multiple projects at the same time. You just can't be everywhere all the time. But I also learned from that feedback I got that they didn't like it. Most of my leaders did not like when I was micromanaging them. So it was like, okay, I had to figure out how to step back and how to do that. So
I was feeling that way about my phone too. I threw it. I don't know if you noticed.
yeah.
That's a good segue into mental health.
Yeah.
Because you touched on it a little bit there.
Yeah.
Also, when someone's just getting into the hospitality industry, do you have any advice for them on how to manage their mental health early? Because I think people, when they first start, just don't think about that at all until everyone I know now later has started to think about it. But when you're, 18 to 21, it's like a non-topic.
Yeah. I mean, our industry is just, again, the hospitality, restaurant, bar industry is just obviously known for we sell liquor for a living, but we consume it just as quickly as we sell it.
Yeah.
Our industry is well known for, drug use and drug abuse as well. Obviously late nights, and sometimes early mornings, clopins, like the way that this business can be. I would say, one thing is it's cultural and it's generational. So like the current generation, Gen Z, is all the stats and facts are that generation is not as focused on like going out and getting wasted on the weekend, so right away, like I feel like the pressure on that generation is going to be different than it was, on everyone in the last, let's say 15 to 30 years, where it was, okay, you work in the bar business, like the expectation is to drink. The expectation is to, when you want to get get to know your coworkers, it's going for drinks, it's being social, it's going to after parties. That's where obviously then the drugs and stuff like that come. I've been doing this for like I said, 25 years as of this year, and I've never done like hard drugs in my life. And like people are generally blown away about that in our industry. And I just made that choice a long time ago that wasn't going to be me. But at the same time, I had periods where, like we talked about earlier, where, when I say 20 drinks, I'm sure that 20 was just me trying to be nice to myself. And, the experiences that have come out of that, and like the risk I've put myself in, and the stress I've put my parents through over the years when I've not been answering my phone because I drank too much or whatever that looks like. So when it comes to mental health, it's very, very apparent that alcohol is not good for your mental health. It doesn't take a lot of rocket science to understand that overconsumption of alcohol is bad for your mental health. And that obviously that's something that can pull you back from all the things that are good for your mental health in terms of, the motivation to wake up in the morning and go to the gym, the motivation to just get outside and get sunlight, the motivation to take care of yourself, the motivation to aspire to do things mentally and developmentally, reading books, having meetings, conversations where you're going to grow and develop yourself. So I'd say like right from the start, like alcohol is your number one challenge in our industry. Drugs obviously can become number two. And if you can manage number one and not partake in number two, then like the sky can be the limit for a lot of people in the hospitality industry. To tell that to an 18-year-old line cook, that's getting peer pressure to have drinks after work, it's hard for sure. And, I think one of the really cool things you're seeing out there right now is obviously the push to non-alcoholic products. Greta, for example, we're doing a menu right now. We've always had lots, I'd say a good amount of non-alcoholic, but for the first time, we're actually like putting effort into our mocktails. We're making sure there's more diversity when it comes to our beer options. And like, so it's not just your one beer, like I would say for years, it was like, you'd have your, what was like O'Doul's or whatever it was back in the day. That was the one beer everyone in the bar business had that was non-alcoholic that you could drink, and it was terrible.
Horrible.
Yeah. And so like, you're not going to probably drink that, right? But the pressure was there, and the pressure was on to have a beer. So I think really cool what a lot of products have done. And, I've had conversations with companies from like Happy Dad to Olay, to, a good friend of mine, Tyson, who's got Chili One's beer, and everyone's focus is like, how do you make a non-alc that obviously tastes as close to the regular product, but also like, how do you make it so that a young consumer doesn't feel like they're, very obviously that they're drinking that. I remember one night I was drinking Corona Sunbrews like 2 summers ago, and this guest just I'd never met him before, and he just started buying me drinks, and he was drinking his Coronas and having shots every time. And then he would buy me a Sunbrew without knowing he was buying me a Sunbrew. I think it was after like the fifth one, he had one for himself, didn't have a clue that he had just had a non-alcoholic. And he's like, how do you just keep pounding all these drinks? He's like, I'm feeling it. I'm like, non-alcoholic, my friend. And he was just like blown away by it. And he didn't feel taken advantage of by it. But I just thought it was funny because like that's that mentality. But like beer companies and these liquor companies have done such a good job of making it so you don't feel like, oh, like I'm drinking a Shirley Temple while everybody else is drinking their beers and their wine. So I think that's a big step in our right direction in terms of getting people to be like, okay, I'm comfortable not drinking alcohol. And then, with mental health, like open, honest conversations, like the hat I'm wearing, it's friends of mine, friends of Felix. They're a Kelowna based apparel company that's all about mental health, donating proceeds to mental health, putting themselves out there, having the tough conversations, being willing to have the conversations with people. And like just having, and these two guys who run that company are just like two of the coolest dudes I've met. And to be so open and honest and comfortable with talking to other, people their age, which would say probably late 20s now, but like all the way through, younger people. And I feel like that's kind of, my job and other people in our industry's job is to make sure that people don't feel that pressure to work the crazy hours. People don't feel the pressure to drink after shift. People don't feel the pressure to keep things inside, right? When people are struggling, like recognize, again, go back to that team mentality of the hospitality industry. Like, hey, when you're having a tough time, like make sure that you do have those resources to reach out to people. And I think one of the big ones that I just noticed recently was just, as much as people can post that they're struggling, or the other way around, post that, hey, if you are struggling, I'm here for you. It's so, I think social media, obviously we know, is just such a fake world in so many cases. It's too bad that, throwing a post up someday saying, hey, like I'm here to help, I think that Simon Sinek has the thing that kind of went viral about it's 8 minutes. You spend 8 minutes with someone, you can truly change their whole perspective and make them, if they feel loved and cared for 8 minutes. So, it's just getting things like that out there and making that mass consumption and having people like truly having no stigma around having a conversation about, hey, I'm having a shitty day. I'm having a shitty week. I'm feeling this, it can be hard. Like I wish I'd had less conversations about suicide in my life with people. But I also don't wish. I wish I had less, because I wish less people were thinking that and feeling that. I'm glad I've had those conversations because I haven't had to have that, situation become a reality with anyone I've been close with, because for whatever reason, those people were comfortable reaching out to people like me and others to get help, to just have a conversation, to just get themselves out of a bad mental place for that day, that week, that year. But yeah, I think just open, honest, genuine conversation about mental health is the key to getting it out there. And, I think there's no better way to do it than just do things like this, and talk about it and make sure people know that, no matter what perception of success is, or, I think that for me, like the more successful hopefully I get in life, and like, again, defining that through family and through my kids and stuff, hopefully the more accessible I get, and hopefully the more genuine I can be, and the less fearful I can be of other people, judging, because that was always the thing for me, and I'm sure it's a thing for most people. Is just, how are people going to judge me if I say this or if I tell them this? And it's like, at the end of the day, people generally are going to be pretty receptive to helping someone who needs help, right? It's a cool part about the way that humans are built. So
it's come a long way. It's really good that people can talk about it. I remember before, when I first started working in the industry, you'd just be roasted if you brought up anything like that. So it's really good that people are talking, especially like leaders like you.
Yeah, it's still there. Like and especially I think on the young side for sure. And again, that's where I go, like kitchens, for example, are definitely known for being harder that way, and like a tougher culture that way. And so, yeah, I've never been a chef. My wife would tell you I've cooked less than 5 times for her in our 6 years together. But I see that pressure, and I see the stress, and I see the different style of, generally a lot of our back house culinary team, they have different personalities. We do personality profiles on all our staff, and, a server or bartender oftentimes will have that more sociable, outgoing, extrovert personality. A lot of your back house culinary team might be more introverted, more detail oriented, and might have less comfort having conversations with even their coworker, let alone someone like myself, right? So again, I think just putting it out there and making sure that people know. And I think you and I were having this conversation the other day about, my goal of, doing the podcast and everything. And, it's like deep down in my heart, when I tell you, if one person listened to me talk and they got a benefit of it and it helped them, that's true. That's the truth, obviously, but big picture, big goals, I want to be able to help hundreds of thousands of people. Like that's really, you talk about like, when did I know that this is what I was supposed to do for a living and I didn't have an answer? Well, it's because I've always believed that what I'm doing now is supposed to lead to something else and is supposed to lead to something bigger. But I'm also like, fuck, I'm 45 this year. When is that going to happen? So, and if along the way it is just helping one person at a time, and then so be it. That's an amazing thing to be. It's an honor to me that people will come to me and ask for advice. It's an honor to me that people will feel comfortable enough with that scenario, and I'm doing something right when that's happening.
What kind of things do you do to manage your own mental health? You're very busy.
Not enough, I think that, that the analogy of like, being able to tell other people what to do, but not able to do it to yourself definitely applies to me in some senses. I'd say there's definitely things like talk about going to therapy. My wife and I'd say we aren't super consistent with it. It's something we've wanted to commit to. But it's something where, even just doing couples therapy with our wife, that might not be enough, like you doing, having those conversations. I had a really bad time in August this year. And one of my good friends, he's got a men's organization called Day One Dads. And one of the things they did was these Better Help cards. And then they basically partnered with this organization. And the first month, if you reach out to the number and there was a code for it, the first month was basically like free therapy. And it's, online, it's super easy, very accessible. And like I had that card. I think I got it at a golf tournament. I'd seen Curtis, my friend who's part of that charity. I've seen him and his partner, Steven, talk about it. And I never ever thought I'd be the one using the card, but I needed it, and I just needed someone to talk to. And the guy I ended up getting paired with was a counselor from older guy in South Carolina and like nothing in common. Like when we talked our first like 5 minutes about who he is and who I am, truly nothing in common other than like men's mental health. So I think like when you talk about what I'm doing, I think I've recognized over the years when I need help. So I think that's maybe one of the big takeaways is that I know my signs that it's getting to be too much. I think I know the things that help me through it better, whether I practice them, for example, like going to the gym, working out, whatever you want to do, even just walking. I know it's good for me, and it's just a matter of sometimes being like, even when I'm in, because obviously when you're depressed and you're feeling those things, the last thing you want to do is anything like that. But it's just that fight, and it's got to be, it's definitely got to be that over the top, like, okay, I know that I'm feeling shitty, but I know if I do this, I'll feel better. I will say having kids has been a miraculous component for me because my kids, I can't be depressed with my kids. Like you can choose that, but I don't choose that. I very rarely choose that. I definitely have bad days where I don't think I'm as great a dad as I'd like to be. But I think overall, my daughter, when she looks at me in the morning, she currently is sleeping in her bed and has been for almost a year. When she looks at me in the morning, I'm like, how do I have a bad day with this, the little kid who's looking up to me and just loves me so much? Like, how do I have a bad day? So, but you can still, like I said, those 2 weeks in August were like excruciating. And that was part of my problem was like, I have these amazing kids that just want their dad to play with them and love them, have fun with them. And yet I'm struggling so much that I'm like, I can't, or I could, but I just wasn't all there, whether I was on my phone or whether just mentally I was in a cloud. So yeah, I mean, I've been on antidepressants in my life. I've done those things, again, I kind of know my triggers now when it's like, okay, like I need that help. I need to talk to a doctor, I need to talk to a therapist. So I think that's one area where I would say I've gotten really good at as I've gotten older is recognizing those signs. I'm probably still too late. Cause I probably believe I can push through these things a little bit more. And I think maybe as an advice component would be realizing you don't have to push through. That life's not about pushing through all the time. Like I think that's such a, again, to the sports analogies, it's such a classic thing that you want in your sports people is like, oh, they push through so much adversity in life. But I think sometimes pushing through makes it worse, right? And sometimes pushing through for some people makes it, unable to ever come back from it. So I think that's learning that pushing through isn't always a win. Mm-hmm. That's not always the best thing for you is a big factor. But yeah, I mean, I think it's the simplest things of having a good night's sleep, eating a good diet, obviously, working out, not drinking much, if at all, no drug use and all those things. Like they are the key. Getting outside is the key, right? If you just listen to those basic principles, you truly will have a different perspective. You'll have a different, you will have a different life, but it's easier said than done. And I think people just need to know that it is easier said than done. And it's okay to have struggles with that stuff. It's okay to not have it be, a simple task to be like, oh, you own 10 businesses. You should be able to manage stress well. Yeah. I think it might be the opposite sometimes, right?
Seems like it. That's a lot.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people push through. Like that's probably the biggest problem I see. People just push through, ignore everything. I'm just going to push through this. And then they never address it. So,
yeah. I was listening to Jeff Bezos the other day and, smart guy, built a pretty big company on Amazon. And his one comment that just really resonated with me was in regards to just having the courage to deal with things. And it actually was really ironic because the one of the leadership courses I take, we did a whole seminar 3 weeks ago and it was all about courage as well. And it's just like, sometimes it's having courage to do the dirty work. Sometimes it's having the courage to be honest and just tell yourself or to others how you're feeling. But one of my big takeaways was just like, and I'm a big procrastinator. I was always writing essays last minute in university. I've always leave things to the end. I always feel like I perform so well under pressure, but just having the courage to do the hard things and just accept that, like, if you do it and you deal with it right now, it's going to suck. It's going to be a shitty conversation or it's going to be a shitty result or like whatever you got to deal with. But if you just do it, like it's so much better for your brain than the alternative of just running through the negative scenarios in your mind. Because I'd say, let's call it 80 to 90% of the time, it's probably going to work out better than what you've said in your mind. Yes, there is that 10, 20% chance that it's going to be exactly what you worked out in your mind and it's going to suck that you're going to have to now deal with it. But getting ahead of it is just such a key component in life, is like we just talked about with mental health. Just if it's like, oh, don't push through it. Mm-hmm. This is where I'm at right now. I've been here before. What did I do last time? Okay, I did this. And what was the result? Oh, it wasn't good. It's like, okay, just getting slightly ahead of it and be like, okay, make the phone call, get the help, have the conversation, like get ahead of it by a little bit, and it can be a fucking game changer.
I'm going to take a quick break.
Yep.
We'll be back. Buddy. Hey, everybody. It says here that 72% of you watching are not subscribed. Please help me out and hit the button below, subscribe. You can watch again next week. Thanks. And we're back. We had a mutual friend pass away recently, and we were just talking about him over break.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really wanted to speak at his funeral, but I was nervous.
Yeah, like I said, that word courage, what a crazy word, and how it can be applied in so many ways. And I'd say, like, I think for one, like something to do with, with your situation there, obviously like being kind to yourself. Not too many people can talk at a memorial service. It's not easy to do. It's, you question, like, that was I close enough to this person? Is anyone going to care what I say? Like, I think it's challenging. So I think, for yourself, give yourself some grace on that. And I think the cool thing about that day and that event, I didn't get to come to the second part of that, like that you got to attend, but like, you got to share that story with all those people one-on-one, I'm sure, that you would have used on the microphone to the 250, 300, whatever people in attendance. So I think that's almost more impactful anyways, sharing a story and sharing the laughs one-on-one and having that ability for someone to probably relate with a similar story with a guy like Ken. Just all those people just, that just loved him because he just was such a kind, genuine person. So it was almost impossible not to have a story about like how Ken did something to help you or warm your heart or whatever. And, I think I told you my Ken story to tell you.
We'll each tell one.
Okay.
Right now.
Yeah. My favorite Ken story. And so I never worked with Ken directly, which was interesting because we've been in the hospitality industry for so many years, but became friends through mutuals. And one of my heyday of physical fitness was working out at YYC Cycle quite often, doing a lot of spin classes. And Ken was there oftentimes at the same time. We did a lot of classes together. And there's just one random Saturday afternoon, and I think we did a noon class or something to that effect. And then there was a class after, and he's just like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I don't know. I don't got any plans." And, generally, I'll go across to the pub and have a beer with your buddy. Ken's like, "You want to do another class?" I'm like, "Sure. Well, I got nothing else to do." So we did a second class, and then for some reason we were stupid enough and we decided to do a third class. So we ended up doing 3 spin classes over, let's call it a 4.5 hour, 5 hour span, 50-minute classes. Both of our legs were just, just wobbly. And like anytime I saw Ken after that, I was like, I think that's the day I stopped spinning. and sorry, Andrew, who owns YYC Cycle. I don't go very often anymore. And I truly think back to that day with Ken. I was like, that was the peak of my little craze of fitness. And then when Ken came up with the tagline, "Fuck it, we ball," for fighting cancer, it was just like, that was one of those days where I was just like, fuck it, we ball, we do it, and it's just like such a Ken thing. And, just, it will forever be, a reminder to me of his perseverance and his resilience. And then watching him, battle such a severe and terminal form of cancer over the last 4 or 5 months is, it just was Ken, that day just will always remind me of that's Ken,
You should go to a spin class.
I should with Sophie.
I'll go with you.
There we go.
We'll go with Sophie. I told her when she was on the show that I'd go. Never went.
I've committed to Sophie and to Andrew to be back there. So let's make it happen. There's a Thursday. I think it's a Thursday, 9:30 a.m. though. I don't know if we can make that work with your schedule, but I'll figure it out. We'll figure it out.
I'll do it for Ken.
Ken. I like that.
Ken was my boss, my first boss in the industry when I was 18. And then I worked for him at 7 different companies. So I would get fired or the Cowboys that we worked at before closed down. Mm. And then he would bring me to different companies every time I'd get fired. He'd keep bringing me on. He kind of sort of over time molded me into the employee he wanted. I wasn't a good employee at first. Yeah. I was bad. I was young, drinking a lot. And he kept hiring me place after place, even, 7 different companies. He was my boss. Pretty much from 18 to 30.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, he trusted you for some reason.
Yeah. So,
he's a good man. He's a good man. He'll be missed by many. He's definitely a legend. That's for sure.
Yeah. I mean, it was apparent in the how many people showed up even at Greta for the fundraiser and then at all of on the weekend here.
Yeah. The fundraiser at Greta was definitely, that was actually the last time I saw Ken. Was that day in person. I talked to him a couple times in between, but that was the last day I saw him in person. And, I think that's one of, when we talk about, again, going back to the thing that I'm supposed to actually do and, knowing what I'm actually supposed to do, that's definitely the world that always comes back to for me is, the second that, I had a conversation with one of that mutual friend that introduced me to Ken years ago, Dave Bowden. And he was like, "Hey, we're looking for a venue for this." I'm like, "Done, man. Done. Not even a question." And that's always my goal with Greta and with some of my other venues that are accessible that way. Greta's obviously got this ability with arcade games and stuff. Yeah, we don't allow kids when we're open to the public, but we're not open until 3:00 every day. So there's this huge window, Saturday, Sunday afternoon. I think this weekend, next weekend, the weekend after, we have charity fundraisers every weekend where we donate the space. We usually donate gaming, things like that. And it's just that's the real rewarding stuff for me. And that's where it's like, fuck, we have such a cool thing. It's like, okay, well, how can I help? How can I help more? And, I think that's, to have no desire to have it be a monetarily beneficial thing for the business, but to have it be something that like Greta and myself, we're known for generosity. We're known for giving. We're known for being a place that, hey, like if someone needs a venue for something or they need a donation shirt, like I try to never say no to a silent auction request or anything like that. And, it's just like, that's just our mentality and that's my mentality. And again, to go back to like what, I wasn't put on this earth to sell liquor for a living, or to play arcade games. I'm not very good at arcade games. Fun fact, really, really bad at it. So at the end of the day, like that's what I want to be known for. And that's, Ken's event will be one of those ones that I'll always put on that list of like, what are the best events that we've hosted? What are the most unique opportunities to help others? Like, doing that event for Ken was great. And, I know so many people showed up and it was the first step in celebrating his life, which is crazy that, I think that was December 1st. Mm-hmm. So, basically, 5 months later to the day, to be in a situation saying goodbye is difficult to comprehend.
Yeah. How did it feel like having your place be this kind of hub for an event like that?
Amazing. It's honestly, it's why we do what we do. Like, before Greta with Hudson's, I would say that's where I really honed in on like the bar, the restaurant business. It's a gathering place, it's like, it's such an important part of the community. We saw it during COVID when restaurants and bars weren't available. It's such an integral and unique part of building communities and building relationships and, activities that people are doing. And it's been cool to see, obviously, it move away from just sitting around a table, drinking beers and watching sports or whatever, to evolve into activities like Greta with arcade or bowling or whatever that is, where it's like, it's more of a social entertainment experience now. But yeah, I think back to like why I'm in this and what do I do? And it's like, we have so many stories in the Hudson's Greta world of people who met their partner and got married to the person they worked with. We have a couple that met at Hudson's Calgary downtown, got married, had kids. Their first son's named Hudson. There was just one the other day. I knew another Hudson's engagement that had just happened. That was, someone who started working for me at Hudson Shaughnessy when she was, I think she might've been 18. Otherwise, I think she was 19, and she's worked at Hudson Shaughnessy now all these years. She's actually the general manager now there, which is amazing because when she was 19, she told me she'd have my job one day. So she's still coming for it, which I love her for it. But she ended up marrying or getting engaged the other day to one of our coworkers who also worked for me at Hudson Shaughnessy since early 2010 type of time frame. So, to see that again, the gathering, the welcoming couples meeting there, then getting engaged at these places because their first date was at Greta Bar, with the arcade games and the fun nature of that, and then they come back and they do an engagement party because they got married there. Or we've even got people who have done their wedding after, receptions at our venue. So celebrating life and celebrating experiences is so much a key to why I love what I do. And I think why most people in the hospitality industry love what they do is like, they have that, you get this ability to give people yourself and, with Greta's case, the venue to curate memories. Right. And I think like life's about memories, right? That's all you have when it's at the end. So
I love Greta. I'm not hyping you up. I love it.
That. When you told me the other day that you were there all the time, I was like, I don't know how we didn't meet over those years.
It's crazy because we have so many mutual friends.
Yeah.
Have you ever had a concept that's just so wild that you wanted to do that just never worked out?
I'm known very much for like just doing. So I don't know if I've ever had one that didn't work out. When we were planning, so with Greta Calgary, we have Greta Calgary, then we took over the space next to us, which we did the indoor-outdoor patio. We call it the alley. And then the space next to that sat empty again for like 2 more years. And I kept trying to convince my business partner to do a Salt and Brick there, the restaurant there. And at one point we were like, he finally committed to doing it. The main reason he committed to doing it was the lease was really good and he really wanted to do a speakeasy. And he's like, well, this is my excuse to do a speakeasy. And I guess I'll let you do something else. At the time we went back and forth, and it was actually on my birthday 2 years ago, 3 years ago now, I guess. And we decided that day we're not doing Salt and Brick. We're just like, we're not going to do it. It doesn't make sense. Casey, my wife and I were getting married. We had already had our daughter and our son, but we were actually finally getting married. The stress levels were high. And my partner, Chris, was like, I can just see that this is not good for anybody to do another restaurant project right now. It's like, I still want to do the speakeasy. Let's just do something else with the front space. So I would say that's the closest. The front space, we came up with this, we were going to do like an event space where you could do weddings and, you know, socials and all this kind of stuff. But I would say like the ideas we bandied about, the names, everything, like I'm so thankful that we never did it. It wasn't a wild and crazy idea, to be honest. It was just a bad idea. And I'm usually known for not figuring out that that's a bad idea before doing it. I usually am more so just like, I can make it work. We can make it work. So I think on the other vein, like Pretty Not Bad in Kelowna would definitely be the one that I would tell you, like, shouldn't have done it. Bad timing in my life to do it. Underfunded, undercapitalized. All the things I tell people about not doing a restaurant. It's like this one had it, but I had this feeling about Pretty Not Bad in Kelowna. I had this belief that this was going to be this game-changing business, both for me when it comes to that other side of me in terms of like the slogan Pretty Not Bad came from a buddy of mine, Alex Haynes, who used it as a hockey kind of terminology. Alex always has called me a nail gun many years ago. And now it's terminology you hear in the hockey world. I'm like, Alex was on it 5 years ago. But I always had this name Pretty Not Bad, but I always flipped it into like a mental health idea of like being like, hey, if guys have trouble telling each other if they're doing well or not, if you say Pretty Not Bad, I truly wanted to build that term up to the level where like it was a men's health moniker where people are like, if they say you're pretty not bad, then you're like, you don't have to worry about your homies. You're good that way. So I would say that would be my closest where I go in terms of like, it was an unconventional sports bar in Kelowna that probably isn't a city that can have an unconventional sports bar. It was not a good idea to probably do it at the time. We're still running it. We're still grinding. It's not been a financial success by any means, but there's still something I believe in about it. But I think to answer your question, usually I just fucking do it and deal with the consequences later, like I am right now with that one. But I've learned so much about this last one that I would say my likelihood of doing another project without vetting it and, truly making sure everything is, it's almost going to have to be perfect because otherwise my wife will fucking kill me. and she deserves to.
So what do you have coming up?
No more projects, obviously.
Or ideas in the pipeline.
Oh,
and actually,
ideas in the pipeline. So we believe Greta is a really dope, cool brand that we should keep growing. So we just did Toronto in April of last year. So we're going to come up to our 1 year right away and it's doing really well. Just had this amazing weekend on King West. And it's basically, my friend Marcus, who was the guy who brought Tito's into Canada. The first time I walked with him in downtown Toronto, because I didn't know Toronto very well at all, he took me a little tour. We actually walked by the location and then we went to this other place, Ruby Soho, and we're sitting having a beer. I look across the street. I'm like, oh, that's it right there. He's like, fuck, Casey. Like, that's the center ice of hospitality in all of Canada. So King and Portland is the cross section there. And, for my business partner, Chris, to have been so freaking persistent to have convinced that landlord eventually when it did become available to lease it to us was such a win. And I think seeing that we can go in a city as big as Toronto, top 5 city in North America, and not only be successful, but be really successful has very much given us the confidence that like we could go into the US, we could go to Europe, we could go anywhere. We've had inquiries. We've never believed in franchising. That's not our vibe. So we've had inquiries from people like, oh, would you ever just let someone else open a Greta in this place? It's like, well, not at this point, maybe down the road. But there's just, because of the late night component of Greta, with the drinking and the dance floors and everything, there's just so much that can go wrong. So it's kind of hard to think about franchising it or something. But I think growing it from 4 to 8 to 14, maybe to 40 is a goal. I don't think I would be a part of that from start to finish. I've been very, as I said earlier, I've given my business partner my notice several times over the years, just because being like, I'm ready for this. Like one more year. So my current 1 more year is 5 years. So I have 4 more years. A 4 more year commitment with Greta. But yeah, I don't know. Once you're in this business, like, and once you know the amount of people that I know, opportunity just comes to you all the time, whether it's other restaurant bar projects, whether it's investments in other products. So like I said, my goal would be to get to a level where, I can start doing these projects with others where they're the ones who are driving the engine and I'm just there for advice and mentorship and support. And a little bit of money. Like that would be, that's my goal. But that's probably 5-10 years out still.
Awesome.
Yeah.
It's been a while. Do you have anything else?
No, man, I really appreciate it. I love watching you do what you do, man. I love seeing people pursue their dreams and follow their dreams. So congratulations to you. Most people don't press start. So
yeah,
good for you.
It's a reoccurring theme that comes up. People don't start. So
good for you, man. Excited. And yeah, hopefully I don't have to cut too much out.
Thanks for coming on the show.
Awesome. Appreciate you, man.